Hi, I'm Michael Smith for Nevada Trails. I have a very special show. I have my good friend and buddy, Sandie La Nae. And if you watched the show before, you know that we've talked about her books. And I think this is either 9 or 10. I'm not sure. The book we're talking about is Weird Haunted Virginia City. And I think last time we talked was Weird Reno. And I gave the book a read. And I tell you what, if your life is tough, read this book. You've got nothing over this book. Because I called Sandie up and I said, there's some tough things in here. And I mean, some misfortunes, heartache, tears. It's just,
yeah,
it's a tough book to read.
This is a very tough book to read.
And
it's called, I don't mean to butt in, but
no, but I'm saying let you go.
Okay. It's called Weird Haunted Virginia City. This has actually no cutesy little ghost stories at all in it. What this book is about is a possibilities of why Virginia City is so haunted. This is a book of true life events, lifestyles, happenings, the tragedies. Virginia City wasn't a very easy town or community to live in, and this book has a lot of graphic, gory details from newspaper events. I tell you, back then it was interesting to do the research for this book because the newspapers back then, the 1800s, they wrote down everything.
Oh yeah, if you like
everything.
What happens in Virginia City gets in the newspaper.
Yes, that's
well,
true.
Let's get into the weeds.
Okay.
Okay, in your book, where it's some serious things, but she also has some things called there's these little quotes that get you from one serious chapter to another serious chapter with a lighter mood. And one is called the Moribund Mention. I was going to write a novel about an overcrowded cemetery, but there was no plot. So I was telling Sandie that I read this one chapter about some people that died, and it was so serious that I had to put the book down, and I actually gave it a day. I started over from scratch. So when I reread it, it wasn't as bad because I already kind of read it. But that's how serious it was, where I couldn't go forward in the book because I couldn't take anything that serious again. Mm-hmm. And we'll talk about that in a second.
Okay.
But one of the things we talked about, or I read about, was haunted peculiarities. Mm-hmm. And this was about a man who, I'm still not sure if I understood it.
Okay.
But I guess an undertaker and his assistant were out.
Okay.
And man had over-invited. Mm-hmm. And he had walked into this undertaker's shop, saw a coffin, and took a nap.
Yes, he did.
Now, they just happened to have another man who was ready for burial. Uh-huh. And when the man came back the undertaker came back, said, there's something amiss. He didn't look familiar.
He didn't. He was a different looking corpse.
So,
one that was breathing.
So I guess the man, I couldn't figure out the extent of the article, but it seemed like he went and got somebody who's going to kick this guy's tail.
Uh-huh. Yeah, they got him at it.
And he did.
Yeah.
And the guy said he probably wouldn't do that ever again because it was a tail whipping.
Yeah, well, it's kind of tough to be drunk and take a nap and then be forcefully picked up and thrown out the door. So
that's one of the more whimsical, tales
sure.
of Virginia City. So I thought that was good. And then you talked about ghostly relics. Mm-hmm. I thought that was kind of neat.
Yes. Well, they just had all kinds of things going on there. Did you read about the part where a man passed away and the pharmacist kept the man's heart in a jar of chloroform on the counter so customers could come in and take a look at it?
You're exactly where I'm at. It had 2 bullet holes in it. Uh-huh. This guy's heart. They put it in chloroform. They put it in the window. Uh-huh. For somebody to see. Uh-huh. And then the article said that the family took the body, but they weren't sure if the heart made it to the body.
You know what? We couldn't find any other information. I think that heart's probably still in a jar somewhere.
So it's one of those heartless stories. So,
well,
so how do you find all these articles? Did Arlene LaFerry, your mm-hmm. helper, or mm-hmm. your assistant, I should say, mm-hmm. who works for the Nevada Historical Society Museum,
right?
Does she say, here's 1,000 newspapers, have at it?
Well, almost. I'm really happy to have met, I'm going to boast Arlene LaFerry here. She is a special works, special works, special, special works historian and docent for the Nevada Historical Society. And she has got phenomenal research talents, phenomenal research methods. In fact, they're almost magical.
She's been there for a lot of years.
Yes.
Yeah.
And one nice thing, too, about Virginia City, our books about Virginia City, is that she lived up there for quite a number of years. So with that, she knows a number of people, their families, businesses that they owned, and then their family, their kids, and their kids. She's just remained friends, good friends. So she's gotten exclusive interviews. And she's been given artifacts that nobody else has.
Oh, wow.
But to get back to like what you were talking about, yes, the Nevada Historical Society keeps all the papers, and we just get an idea in our head for a particular chapter, and she just goes and looks for all these articles. At the binder that she gave me with information was like that thick, and so we like to boast that this book of ours has over 50,000 pieces of information that we researched that's in here.
Wow.
Okay? And a combined of 35 years of research, because I kind of added a couple of sentences here too. So this book was very researched. I mean, very well researched. There's articles and information, tidbits of cool anecdotes and thrills and chills.
Well, let's keep on going with the tidbits.
Okay, all right.
One of the ones I liked was Twice Buried. Mm-hmm. This came up a couple times where people were deemed unable to pay, and the county buried them. Mm-hmm. And then back then, I guess it took a long time to communicate by telegraph that somebody had the money to actually pay for the burial. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So twice in your book, people said, here's the money, and they dug them up.
They would dig them up and then rebury them in a nicer coffin or casket, and then in a nicer part of the cemetery.
Yeah.
So,
Well, one lady got a new gown, too. I guess her friends decided she was not worthy of what the county decided, so they put her in a $150 gown, too, which is a lot of money back then.
It was a lot of money back then, which that happened to be a lady of the evening, and her sisters wanted her to be buried looking a little more proper, so they put the money together to buy her that gown.
I did not know that was a lady of the evening.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I guess some things didn't make the book.
That's right.
Well, another thing was kind of next one, and it was a dead child was found in a shaft. Mm-hmm. And I thought, oh, man. And then when I read further, I guess the Paiute Indians had problems burying their loved ones deceased, so they would do rocks and crevices. And then when the mines are abandoned, they were using the mines for their burials.
Exactly, because I don't know if you're familiar with the Nevada soil and territory here, very rocky. I mean, it's just like one rock is cemented to the next. So that's what they would do, is take their loved ones and put them in a cave, and that was their tomb, I guess. Yeah.
Well, it struck me because when I lived in Garden Valley, when I first moved to this region, we had a lot of mines and, as they call them, coyote holes. But when we lost a goat, I worked at a goat ranch. We put them down the mine too. So it was like, we weren't the only ones. But I was just kind of struck on that. Mm-hmm. And then, like I said, this was another one, Twice the Grave. And then another one of your Moribund mentions, which I like so much. If no one knows when a person is going to die, how can we say they died prematurely?
That's right. That is a good point.
So
yes.
when you get too serious about, like we just talked about, and then she puts in one of these things, and you go, okay, I can read further.
Exactly.
And the ones I said were pretty serious. But you got into I think like talking about 1863 to 1880. Like 300 miners were killed and 600 were injured on mines. Mm-hmm. And then. But then I heard another stat in the book said people were dying almost every day.
Oh, yeah.
So it was like I couldn't tell if these are exact mine accidents combined with people getting shot in the streets. Or
everything.
Was it a different stat?
Oh, yeah, everything. Illnesses, children dying, of pneumonia, babies, gunshot wounds, other illnesses, falling off of a mountain, I think you read in the book here, I have a section in my book of many, anomalies that befell people there. A gunshot wound, falling off of a wagon. The miners.
Oh,
miners
yes.
were always at risk. Every day somebody got hurt or killed.
Well, then you had all these things about good luck charms, and then I thought it was funny about the rats. The rats are perceived as maybe you see rats, maybe it's a good sign about finding a load.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Or you felt that the rats are there. It means that if they leave, it means it might impending disaster.
Exactly. Uh-huh.
Because they knew how to sense the cracking of the rock and the wood braces. Mm-hmm. Well, we're going to hit a break real soon.
Okay.
But before we go to break, can you tell now and after break how you can buy this book?
You can get this book at my website, which is www.sandiepsychicstones.com, and you can also get this book at the Nevada Historical Society in Reno, Nevada.
Yeah, it's a good read. I read it in a couple of days. Like I said, I had to put it down, but then I picked it back up. Mm-hmm. So then I read it completely. So when we come back, we're going to look more about weird haunted Virginia City with Sandie La Nae. Thank you very much. Hi, we're back with Sandie La Nae, and the book we're talking about is Weird Haunted Virginia City. And one of the things in the book, like I said, it's really some tough stuff. There was a fire in the Yellow Jacket gold mine,
Oh,
Gold
that
Hill
was
mine,
a tragedy.
and they got to the point where they just sealed it up. I guess the whatever was burning, they couldn't put it out,
For decades.
and it burned hot for So I thought, there's some really tough story. Your
Yes,
your
there
loved one,
is.
35 miners died in that. So if you are involved with the mine business, this lets you know how tough your loved ones have. Then was mentioned about the Tommy knockers.
Uh-huh.
That could be a book on itself.
Oh, it could. Yeah, that was fascinating. Yeah.
And then you had talked about George Sweeney again.
Yes, I did. Which I already have written a book, the Sweeney Building in Carson City, one of Carson City's original buildings, and his son, James Sweeney, actually happened to be a miner, and he became an assemblyman, and he brought in the law for an 8-hour workday. So we can go all the way back to the late 1800s and thank James G. Sweeney for our 8-hour workday. If not, the people were working 10, 12 hours a day and go home, go to sleep, come back and work 10, 12 hours.
But he'd go home and take his bar exam.
Uh-huh. He took his bar exam.
If you want to
and,
be a young man that knows how to work hard, just follow Sweeney, because it's very impressive. And he did all this stuff, and it was just a miracle.
He was phenomenal.
And then he paid for his college on the East Coast. But then probably my favorite story in the whole book was about Mary Jane.
Yes, Mary Jane Simpson. Mm-hmm.
Want to elaborate on Mary?
I would like to do that.
My sweetheart?
She happened to be a mule that worked in the mines, and she was phenomenal. She knew exactly when her time started and when her shift ended. She knew she had to be trained, but after a very short while, she knew what tunnel to be in, what ore car to hook up to, and when the 3 bells would ring at the end of the shift, she knew that was her time to stop work. She'd go back to her stall, which was in the mines, and she was treated like royalty. And sadly, during the Yellow Jacket fire, it started very, very close to her stall, and of course she lost her life. But that's a real phenomenal and real fascinating story about Mary Jane Simpson.
Well, they even got her ashes and what was left of her and made sure, and they had a procession funeral.
They did.
And buried her with honors.
Uh-huh.
So she was a most beloved animal.
She was.
And so I thought that was great. And then again, talk about the past coming back to us. Julia Villette, our good friend Kim Harris, has played her before, and we've been at her place a number of times, talking about a famous resident. So that's in the book.
That's in the book too. Extra little things that really haven't been written anywhere else about Julia's in the book here.
Well, that was a wild day. We're taping her her play back in Virginia City, a couple years ago.
Uh-huh.
And I just got called, my best friend died. So I wasn't going to hang around the play. I was let you guys do the work, and then I was just going to go out and, I don't know, grieve or whatever. Well, I ended up in a museum for Julia Villette, and I never heard of her before that play. And then this whole thing was full of her pictures and stuff.
Yes.
It kind of brought me back into history, and I ended up working on taking pictures for the show and things. But it was really, if you go there, this is a famous character. It's not something that Kim just made up. It's a real deal.
Right.
And
She's
so
a
I
real
thought
deal.
that was good. And then you had a lot of other people. Is there anybody that you really gravitated to? I know we talked about some of this stuff. What was your favorite part of the book, writing, the researching, and doing all this?
Oh, you know what? I really couldn't say that I have a favorite part. I did happen to go on findagrave.com, and I found some of the people that I talked about in the book here that Arlene and I had written for the book. And I went to that Find a Grave, and you can add flowers and a notation. And so I would go back to these people that I could find and give them forget-me-not flowers.
Oh, I think
and
that's
a
great.
notation that we will make sure that you are acknowledged and recognized in our book.
Yeah, because there's some of the people in here I would like to go back and say hello. That one girl that lost her life because of a dress when she was 16, and another lady who had a hoop dress that got caught. That struck me as being really human at the wrong time, having problems. And then, but also I wanted to ask you, I didn't understand what the Barbary Coast was. I know it's supposed to be like a tough area of bars, but that name came up like, is this a slang of the region of like a certain street that had the tough bars or something?
Yes,
it came up a number of times.
It was at the south end of town.
Yeah.
And it was where the ladies of the evening were housed.
Oh,
and a lot of
D
bars.
Street?
Some were on D Street, but this was mostly up by C and A Street.
Okay.
It was kind of a big arch type of buildings there. And that's where the fire of 1875 started, which just practically burnt the entire town.
That was a bad one. Yeah,
It was
that
horrible.
that took out most of the town. I thought that was interesting too. And can you tell me about Arlene LaFerrier's? She commissioned a bench there in honor of Louise Scottini.
Scottini.
And I guess she was a disabled person that ended up with the nuns and lived there for 50 years. And
Yes,
she was mentally
was.
impaired. And I didn't know how she was touched by Arlene to, honor her in such a way.
Well, Arlene had discovered Louise Scottini, and that in 1888, her parents left her at the then St. Mary's Louise Hospital. We think that she had pneumonia, and being she had Down syndrome. Okay,
Okay.
That's what she was. It was a Down syndrome child, and so her parents, I guess, didn't know how to take care of her, and so for the next 4 decades, she stayed at the St. Mary Louise Hospital, which turned into the Story County Hospital, and she would help with the patients. We discovered she liked to help the patients around in the wheelchairs.
Yeah, it sounded like she did a great job just pushing people around. And probably like I know when I visited my grandma, she liked to go outside in the sunshine. So
Right.
that'd be a valuable asset to have someone to do that.
So Arlene decided to do something for Louisa because a lot of people don't really know Louisa, the story about her.
Yeah.
And so Arlene made a bench and put the Louisa's Scottini's badge or title or nameplate on the bench in the Silver Terrace Cemetery up there.
Well, I really thought that your book really put a lot of history into perspective because that was just perfect story. And then here's another one of your sayings that just makes me laugh. I did not attend his funeral, but I sent a nice letter saying I approved of it.
That was Mark Twain. I love Mark Twain, and my books have to have something, a quote of his in
I
it.
thought that's perfect because it's hilarious. But when I was reading the book, I kind of thought Mark Twain would be more prominent. But with all these newspaper articles, I didn't really figure out anything that was for him.
Well, I tried to not specialize in Mark Twain because there's some things in here from Dandy Quayle and then just other reporters, of the times, of the days. Mark Twain wasn't up in Virginia City as long as people thought he was. And so there's a lot of reporters that worked for the Territorial Enterprise. And then this book, too, has got very interesting information from Sacramento, San Francisco papers, Palo Alto papers, things like that. So,
Well, they had some weird things where California people were taking the bones of the Nevada graves
Yes.
and turning them into doing something at a sugar mill or something.
yes, isn't that crazy?
And people are saying, you guys are taking our money and our livelihood, and now you're taking our bones.
Yeah,
Wild
they-
stuff. And then another thing I was
Yeah.
curious at, there was a piece in there where there was a Chinese people were committing suicide, and it made it seem like there was a lot of girls committing suicide.
Yeah.
But I couldn't figure out how many or what the flow was. That was
Right.
almost like another book or something.
It kind of was. The Chinese culture kind of had it very hard during that time, and they were just doing, what they could do and helping out. They were pivotal, actually.
Well, yeah,
you
they
know.
majorly saved the whole region because of their labor. But another story, this is a wild story. I think the guy who had lived above nitroglycerin.
Oh,
Tell me about
Van
that.
Hoekelen. Oh, yeah.
Now, is that a game plan?
Well, I don't know. The poor guy, I don't know what he was trying to do, but to keep nitroglycerin under your bed just is not a good thing now,
Well, this
nor
was-
was it then.
This guy was a general. He lived above the armory or something.
Yes.
And then they had we're talking like 200 pounds and stuff that went up. And
Yeah.
it took out the whole area.
Took out the whole building. Oh, quite a few. It was like, okay. I think of course, he lost his life, but I think he learned don't put nitroglycerin and blasting caps underneath your bed. It just doesn't work out quite
I
well.
bet the Board of Supervisors created a whole new zoning on that one. And then that fire of 1875 was
Yeah, that
terrible.
was- yeah.
People had to put their luggage out to save their stuff, and they had to move it like 8 times. They
8
said,
times.
and then
To try and
at a
get further away from the fire.
and they didn't make it. Well, we're at the end of our story, and I'm sorry I was so excited about your book. I probably hogged the whole conversation, but we're down to 2 minutes. Is there anything you want to say about your book? I really loved it, by the way.
Well, let's see. I guess I could say about this book that it's not for the squeamish. There's really a lot of detailed horror stories in here. Life wasn't easy in Virginia City. And this book explains a lot of the lifestyles, and a lot of tragedies that happened up here, especially when you've just got a wood and brick town. It can go up in a matter of seconds. But people strive to try and make the best life that they could with what they had.
I think that's well put. You really put you there. Like I said, it makes us appreciate how spoiled we are right now.
Exactly. Oh, yeah, exactly. Because this was most of it was a lawless town. It was a tough town, a transient town. People went there to try and make their fortunes, and that only happened to a very select few.
Well, we're down to the last 45 seconds. Go ahead and give out your contact, and go ahead and get this book if you can.
You bet. You can order this book at my website, which is at www.sandiepsychicstones.com.
Well, thank you, Sandie, for being on Nevada Trails.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
This has been fun.
It's Michael Smith talking from Nevada Trails. Check out the book. It's a good read. Thank you very much.